The Richest Man in Babylon Part 10. 1 and Quat. Overseers cursed the laggards and cracked bullock whips over the backs of those who failed to keep in line. Poor, worn-out fellows were seen to stagger and fall beneath their heavy baskets, unable to rise again. If the lash failed to bring them to their feet, they were pushed to the side of the paths and left writhing in agony. Soon they would be dragged down to join other craven bodies beside the roadway to await unsanctified graves. As I beheld the ghastly sight, I shuddered. So this was what awaited my father's son if he failed at the slave market. And Quat, Godoso had been right. We were taken through the gates of the city to the slave prison and next morning marched to the pens in the market. Here the rest of the men huddled in fear, and only the whips of our guard could keep them moving so the buyers could examine them. Megiddo and myself eagerly talked to every man who permitted us to address him. And Quat, the slave dealer, brought soldiers from the king's guard who shackled Pirate and brutally beat him. When he protested, as they led him away, I felt sorry for him. And Quat, Megiddo, felt that we would soon part. When no buyers were near, he talked to me earnestly to impress upon me how valuable work would be to me in the future. Some men hate it. They make it their enemy. Better to treat it like a friend. Make thyself like it. Don't mind because it is hard. If thou thinkest about what a good house thou build, then who cares if the beams are heavy and it is far from the well to carry the water for the plaster? Promise me, boy, if thou get a master, work for him as hard as thou canst. If he does not appreciate all thou do, never mind. Remember, work, well done, does good to the man who does it. It makes him a better man. He stopped as a burly farmer came to the enclosure and looked at us critically. And Quat, Megiddo, asked about his farm and crops, soon convincing him that he would be a valuable man. After violent bargaining with the slave dealer, the farmer drew a fat purse from beneath his robe, and soon Megiddo had followed his new master out of sight. And Quat, a few other men were sold during the morning. At noon Godoso conned to me that the dealer was disgusted and would not stay over another night but would take all who remained at sundown to the king's buyer. I was becoming desperate when a fat, good-natured man walked up to the wall and inquired if there was a baker among us. And Quat, I approached him saying, why should a good baker like thyself seek another baker of inferior ways? Would it not be easier to teach a willing man like myself thy skilled ways? Look at me, I am young, strong, and like to work. Give me a chance and I will do my best to earn gold and silver for thy purse. And Quat, he was impressed by my willingness and began bargaining with the dealer, who had never noticed me since he had bought me, but now waxed eloquent on my abilities, good health and good disposition. I felt like a fat ox being sold to a butcher. At last, much to my joy, the deal was closed. I followed my new master away, thinking I was the luckiest man in Babylon. And Quat, my new home was much to my liking. Nana Nade, my master, taught me how to grind the barley in the stone bowl that stood in the courtyard, how to build the rye in the oven, and then how to grind the sesame hour for the honey cakes. I had a couch in the shed where his grain was stored. The old slave housekeeper, Swasti, fed me well and was pleased at the way I helped her with the heavy tasks. And Quat, here was the chance I had longed for to make myself valuable to my master and, I hoped, to end a way to earn my freedom. And Quat, I asked Nana Nade to show me how to knead the bread and to bake. This he did, much pleased at my willingness. Later, when I could do this well, I asked him to show me how to make the honey cakes, and soon I was doing all the baking. My master was glad to be idle, but Swasti shook her head in disapproval. No work to do is bad for any man, she declared. And quote, I felt it was time for me to think of a way by which I might start to earn coins to buy my freedom. As the baking was niched at noon, I thought Nana Nade would approve if I found pro-table employment for the afternoons and might share my earnings with me. Then the thought came to me, why not bake more of the honey cakes and peddle them to hungry men upon the streets of the city? And quote, I presented my plan to Nana Nade this way. If I can use my afternoons after the baking is niched to earn for thee coins, would it be only fair for thee to share my earnings with me, that I might have money of my own to spend for those things which every man desires and needs? And quote, fair enough, he admitted. When I told him of my plan to peddle our honey cakes, he was well pleased. Here is what we will do, he suggested. Thou sellest them at 2 for a penny. Then half of the pennies will be mine to pay for the hour and the honey and the wood to bake them. Of the rest, I shall take half and thou shalt keep half. And quote, I was much pleased by his generous offer that I might keep for myself 1/4 of my sales. That night I worked late to make a tray upon which to display them. Nana Nade gave me one of his worn robes that I might look well, and Swasti helped me patch it and wash it clean. And quote, the next day I baked an extra supply of honey cakes. They looked brown and tempting upon the tray as I went along the street, loudly calling my wares. At RST no one seemed interested, and I became discouraged. I kept on, and later in the afternoon as men became hungry, the cakes began to sell and soon my tray was empty. And quote, Nana Nade was well pleased with my success and gladly paid me my share. I was delighted to own pennies. Megiddo had been right when he said a master appreciated good work from his slaves. That night I was so excited over my success I could hardly sleep and tried to guess how much I could earn in a year and how many years would be required to buy my freedom. And quote, as I went forth with my tray of cakes every day, I soon found regular customers. One of these was none other than thy grandfather, Arad Gula. He was a rug merchant and sold to the housewives, going from one end of the city to the other, accompanied by a donkey loaded high with rugs and a black slave to tend it. He would buy 2 cakes for himself and 2 for his slave, always tarrying to talk with me while they ate them. And quote, thy grandfather said something to me one day that I shall always remember. I like thy cakes, boy, but better still I like the any enterprise with which thou oerest them. Such spirit can carry thee far on the road to success. And quote, but how canst thou understand, Harden Gula, what such words of encouragement could mean to a slave boy, lonesome in a great city, struggling with all he had in him to end a way out of his humiliation? And quote, as the months went by I continued to add pennies to my purse. It began to have a comforting weight upon my belt. Work was proving to be my best friend, just as Megiddo had said. I was happy, but Swasti was worried. And quote, thy master, I fear to have him spend so much time at the gaming houses, she protested. And quote, I was overjoyed one day to meet my friend Megiddo upon the street. He was leading 3 donkeys loaded with vegetables to the market. I am doing mighty well, he said. My master does appreciate my good work, for now I am a foreman. See, he does trust the marketing to me, and also he is sending for my family. Work is helping me to recover from my great trouble. Some day it will help me to buy my freedom and once more own a farm of my own. And quote, time went on and Nana Nade became more and more anxious for me to return from selling. He would be waiting when I returned and would eagerly count and divide our money. He would also urge me to seek further markets and increase my sales. And quote, often I went outside the city gates to solicit the overseers of the slaves building the walls. I hated to return to the disagreeable sights but found the overseers liberal buyers. One day I was surprised to see Zarbado waiting in line to his basket with bricks. He was gaunt and bent, and his back was covered with welts and sores from the whips of the overseers. I was sorry for him and handed him a cake which he crushed into his mouth like a hungry animal. Seeing the greedy look in his eyes, I ran before he could grab my tray. And quote, why dost thou work so hard? Arad Gula said to me one day. Almost the same question thou asked of me today, dost thou remember? I told him what Megiddo had said about work and how it was proving to be my best friend. I showed him with pride my wallet of pennies and explained how I was saving them to buy my freedom. And quote, when thou art free, what wilt thou do? He inquired. And quote, then I answered, I intend to become a merchant. And quote, at that, he conned dead in me something I had never suspected. Thou knowest not that I, also, I'm a slave. I am in partnership with my master. And quote, stop, and quote, demanded Hardan Gula. And quote, I will not listen to lies defaming my grandfather. He was no slave, and quote, his eyes blazed in anger. Sharu Nada remained calm. And quote, I honor him for rising above his misfortune and becoming a leading citizen of Damascus. Art thou, his grandson, cast of the same mold? Art thou man enough to face true facts, or dost thou prefer to live under false illusions? And quote, Hardan Gula straightened in his saddle. In a voice suppressed with deep emotion he replied, and quote, my grandfather was beloved by all. Countless were his good deeds. When the famine came, did not his gold buy grain in Egypt, and did not his caravan bring it to Damascus and distribute it to the people so none would starve? Now thou sayest he was but a despised slave in Babylon. And quote, had he remained a slave in Babylon, then he might well have been despised. But when, through his own eorts, he became a great man in Damascus, the gods indeed condoned his misfortunes and honored him with their respect. And quote, Sharu Nada replied. And quote, after telling me that he was a slave. And quote, Sharu Nada continued, and quote, he explained how anxious he had been to earn his freedom. Now that he had enough money to buy this, he was much disturbed as to what he should do. He was no longer making good sales and feared to leave the support of his master. And quote, I protested his indecision. Cling no longer to thy master. Get once again the feeling of being a free man. Act like a free man and succeed like one. Decide what thou desirest to accomplish, and then work will aid thee to achieve it. He went on his way saying he was glad I had shamed him for his cowardice. 2 and quote, one day I went outside the gates again, and was surprised to end a great crowd gathering there. When I asked a man for an explanation, he replied, and quote, hast thou not heard? An escaped slave who murdered one of the king's guards has been brought to justice and will this day be ogged to death for his crime. Even the king himself is to be here. And quote, so dense was the crowd about the ogging post, I feared to go near lest my tray of honey cakes be upset. Therefore, I climbed up the unnished wall to see over the heads of the people. I was fortunate in having a view of Nebuchadnezzar himself as he rode by in his golden chariot. Never had I beheld such grandeur, such robes and hangings of gold cloth and velvet. And quote, I could not see thee. ogging though I could hear the shrieks of the poor slave. I wondered how one so noble as our handsome king could endure to see such suffering, yet when I saw he was laughing and joking with his nobles, I knew he was cruel and understood why such inhuman tasks were demanded of the slaves. Building the walls. And quote, after the slave was dead, his body was hung upon a pole by a rope attached to his leg so all might see. As the crowd began to thin, I went close. On the hairy chest, I saw tattooed 2 entwined serpents. It was pirate. And quote, the next time I met Aradgula he was a changed man. Full of enthusiasm he greeted me. Behold, the slave thou knewest is now a free man. There was magic in thy words. Already my sales and my protease are increasing. My wife is overjoyed. She was a free woman, the niece of my master. She much desires that we move to a strange city where no man shall know I was once a slave. Thus, our children shall be above reproach for their father's misfortune. Work has become my best helper. It has enabled me to recapture my confidence and my skill to sell. And quote, I was overjoyed that I had been able even in a small way to repay him for the encouragement he had given me. And quote, one evening Swasti came to me in deep distress. Thy master is in trouble. I fear for him. Some months ago he lost much at the gaming tables. He pays not the farmer for his grain nor his honey. He pays not the money lender. They are angry and threaten him. And quote, why should we worry over his folly? We are not his keepers, I replied thoughtlessly. And quote, foolish youth, thou understandest not. To the money lender didst he give thy title to secure a loan. Under the law he can claim thee and sell thee. I know not what to do. He is a good master. Why, oh why, should such trouble come upon him? And quote, nor were Swasti's fears groundless. While I was doing the baking next morning, the money lender returned with a man he called Sasi. This man looked me over and said I would do. And quote, the moneylender waited not for my master to return but told Swasti to tell him he had taken me, with only the robe on my back and the purse of pennies hanging safely from my belt. I was hurried away from the unnished baking. And quote, I was whirled away from my dearest hopes as the hurricane snatches the tree from the forest and casts it into the surging sea. Again a gaming house and barley beer had caused me disaster. And quote, Sasi was a blunt, gru man. As he led me across the city, I told him of the good work I had been doing for Nana Nade and said I hoped to do good work for him. His reply oered no encouragement, and quote, I like not this work. My master likes it not. The king has told him to send me to build a section of the Grand Canal. Master tells Sasi to buy more slaves, work hard and niche quick. How can any man niche a big job quick? And quote, picture a desert with not a tree, just low shrubs and a sun burning with such fury the water in our barrels became so hot we could scarcely drink it. Then picture rows of men going down into the deep excavation and lugging heavy baskets of dirt up soft, dusty trails from daylight until dark. Picture food served in open troughs, from which we helped ourselves like swine. We had no tents, no straw for beds. That was the situation in which I found myself. I buried my wallet in a marked spot, wondering if I would ever dig it up again. And quote, at RST I worked with good will, but as the months dragged on, I felt my spirit breaking. Then the heat fever took hold of my weary body. I lost my appetite and could scarcely eat the mutton and vegetables. At night I would toss in unhappy wakefulness. And quote, in my misery, I wondered if Sabado had not the best plan, to shirk and keep his back from being broken in. Work. Then I recalled my last sight of him and knew his plan was not good. And quot, I thought of pirate with his bitterness and wondered if it might be just as well to GHT and kill. The memory of his bleeding body reminded me that his plan was also useless. And quot, then I remembered my last sight of Megiddo. His hands were deeply calloused from hard work, but his heart was light and there was happiness on his face. His was the best plan. And quot, yet I was just as willing to work as Megiddo. He could not have worked harder than I. Why did not my work bring me happiness and success? Was it work that brought Megiddo happiness, or was happiness and success merely in the laps of the gods? Was I to work the rest of my life without gaining my desires, without happiness and success? All of these questions were jumbled in my mind and I had not an answer. Indeed, I was sorely confused. And quot, several days later, when it seemed that I was at the end of my endurance and my questions still unanswered, Sasi sent for me. A messenger had come from my master to take me back to Babylon. I dug up my precious wallet, wrapped myself in the tattered remnants of my robe and was on my way, mounted behind the messenger. And quot, as we rode, the same thoughts of a hurricane whirling me hither and thither kept racing through my feverish brain. I seemed to be living the weird words of a chant from my native town of Harun, besetting a man like a whirlwind, driving him like a storm, whose course no one can follow, whose destiny no one can foretell. And quot, was I destined to be ever thus punished for I knew not what? What new miseries and disappointments awaited me? And quot, when we rode into the courtyard of my master's house, imagine my surprise when I saw Arad Gula awaiting me. He helped me down and hugged me like a long-lost brother. And quot, as we went our way I would have followed him as a slave should follow his master, but he would not permit me. He put his arm about me, saying, I hunted everywhere for thee. When I had almost given up hope, I did meet Swasti, who told me of the money lender, who directed me to thy noble owner. A hard bargain he did drive and made me pay an outrageous price, but thou art worth it. Thy philosophy and thy enterprise have been my inspiration to this new success. And quot, Megiddo's philosophy, not mine, I interrupted. And quot, Megiddo's and thine. Thanks to thee both, we are going to Damascus and I need thee for my partner. See, he exclaimed, in one moment thou wilt be a free man. So saying he drew from beneath his robe the clay tablet carrying my title. This he raised above his head and hurled it to break in 100 pieces upon the cobblestones. With glee he stamped upon the fragments until they were but dust. And quot, tears of gratitude led my eyes. I knew I was the luckiest man in Babylon. And quot, work, thou see, by this, in the time of my greatest distress, didst prove to be my best friend. My willingness to work enabled me to escape from being sold to join the slave gangs upon the walls. It also so impressed thy grandfather, he selected me for his partner. And quot, then Herdan Gula questioned, and quot, was work my grandfather's secret key to the golden shekels? And quot, it was the only key he had when IRST knew him. And quot, Sharu Nada replied. And quot, thy grandfather enjoyed working. The gods appreciated his eorts and rewarded him liberally. And quot, I begin to see. And quot, Herdan Gula was speaking thoughtfully. And quot, work attracted his many friends who admired his industry and the success it brought. Work brought him the honors he enjoyed so much in Damascus. Work brought him all those things I have approved. And I thought work was tea. only for slaves. Life is rich with many pleasures for men to enjoy. Sharu Nada commented. Each has its place. I am glad that work is not reserved for slaves. Were that the case, I would be deprived of my greatest pleasure. Many things do I enjoy, but nothing takes the place of work. Sharu Nada and Hadan Gula rode in the shadows of the towering walls up to the massive, bronze gates of Babylon. At their approach, the gate guards jumped to attention and respectfully saluted an honored citizen. With head held high, Sharu Nada led the long caravan through the gates and up the streets of the city. I have always hoped to be a man like my grandfather. Hadan Gula condemned to him. Never before did I realize just what kind of man he was. This thou hast shown me. Now that I understand, I do admire him all the more and feel more determined to be like him. I fear I can never repay thee for giving me the true key to his success. From this day forth, I shall use his key. I shall start humbly as he started, which beats my true station far better than jewels and any robes. So saying, Hadan Gula pulled the jeweled baubles from his ears and the rings from his fingers. Then, reining his horse, he dropped back and rode with deep respect behind the leader of the caravan. 1. The famous works of ancient Babylon, its walls, temples, hanging gardens and great canals, were built by slave labor, mainly prisoners of war, which explains the inhuman treatment they received. This force of workmen also included many citizens of Babylon and its provinces who had been sold into slavery because of crimes or financial troubles. It was a common custom for men to put themselves, their wives or their children up as a bond to guarantee payment of loans, legal judgments, or other obligations. In case of default, those so bonded were sold into slavery. 2. Slave customs in ancient Babylon, though they may seem inconsistent to us, were strictly regulated by law. For example, a slave could own property of any kind, even other slaves upon which his master had no claim. Slaves intermarried freely with non-slaves. Children of free mothers were free. Most of the city merchants were slaves. Many of these were in partnership with their masters and wealthy in their own right. If you like our content, please like and subscribe for more videos.